Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you from wherever you are watching this from. It's your man again, Diego Ife, and this is an episode of the Africa Bulletin. Now, today's episode concerns news coming out from Nigeria. And as of the 3rd of December, Nigeria has tabled an official application to join the G20 and the BRICS bloc of nations. Now, the reason Nigeria has sought out South Africa's support to join the G20 is because South Africa has been made the official chair of the G20 Intergovernmental Bloc of Nations. And in the case of BRICS, South Africa is a founding member of the bloc of BRICS countries alongside Brazil, Russia, India, China. And now BRICS has expanded its membership. These countries, the ones that I just mentioned, have now been joined by the likes of the UAE, Egypt, Ethiopia and Iran. Nigeria is now bidding to be the next country to join them, citing giving Africa a voice and obviously Nigeria's strategic presence on the continent and within the West African sub-region. Moreover, Joe Biden, during a conference, G20 conference in New Delhi last year, September, commended Nigeria for the US-Nigeria relationship and of course the role they play in that dynamic. And they endorsed Nigeria's application to join the G20, citing a positive impression around their ability to preserve democracy within the region. Make of that what you will, of course. Moreover, I should also add this as well. Under the auspices of the United States and Nigeria partnering for prosperity, the US has provided nearly $1.2 billion in financial year 2022 in aid to support, and they call it foreign aid assistance in the forms of the economy or economic development, education, democracy, health, energy and climate, humanitarian relief, security and more, right? Load of words, big grammar as Nigerians would say. Now, for those who don't know, when a country spends aid or extends aid to other countries, it's usually to buy material influence or influence that can have a material effect on the lives of those citizens and even perhaps citizens that might be part of the region or somehow connects to the country in question. So there have been concerns in the mainstream media and also in sort of social media, so I should say legacy media and social media, concerns of Nigeria potentially being a neo-colonial entity of the US empire, so to speak. Now, the extent of aid certainly at the very least underlines the influence, the importance of US influence within the Nigeria terrain. So, of course, there's a trade-off with everything, and there might be something to those concerns about neo-colonialism and therefore questionable self-determination, as the UN stipulates that these countries should have, and of course the Atlantic Charter back in the 1940s, which also sort of speaks to countries having their own self-determination and respecting international law. Now, Nigeria is an interesting case. In order to make sense of whether or not US aid or the economic performance is as great as it has been claimed, let's look at the recent IMF stats of this year 2024. And according to its report, Nigeria has shown resilience with GDP growing year on year by 2.9, let's just call it 3% growth in quarter one, and in quarter three, or rather quarter four, 3.46%. As of quarter one, the growth, or rather the performance, Nigeria's economic performance was driven by the service sector at 58% to GDP ratio, agriculture by a paltry 0.18%, and the industry sector by 2.19%. Now, quarter four, which is of course the most recent data available, the service sector unsurprisingly continued to lead. The non-oil sector is in second place, and the oil sector is in third place. Now, the IMF projects Nigeria's real GDP will grow by 2.19%, and consumer prices will increase by 32.5%. Now, the inflation issue is somewhat bittersweet depending on perspective. On the one hand, for those who are buying Nigerian sovereign debt as an investment, there's some good deals to be had. But in the case of your average Nigerian's affordability, this is problematic, right? So it's worth noting that according to Nigeria's National Bureau of Statistics, around 1,346 naira per Nigerian is needed for Nigerians to have a healthy meal. Now, keep in mind, the average Nigerian household is 5 people to a household. And the figure I gave of 1,346 naira is the annual, the daily rate. Now, the US claims that the average Nigerian subsists on less than $2 a day. However, when I looked at the data, it's actually for that healthy meal to be met, the requirements around the healthy meal to be met, you're looking at between 78 to 82 cents for Nigerian. Now, Nigeria's current minimum wage is around the 70,000 naira mark. And so if you're looking at the amount of income that the average Nigerian household has to make in order to feed themselves, you're looking at 3 to 4 of that household. Now, keep in mind that typically in Nigerian household, you either have a breadwinner or it'd be a 2-parent income household. That puts pressure on the family to find income equivalent for an extra 1.5 or so people. And of course, where this is tricky is that one particular piece of data or information that's not often taken into account is Nigeria's informal sector, of which apparently 77% of Nigerians that are counted as in the workforce, that's working 1 hour at least per day. Those Nigerians would have to, to put it another way, there is what they call opacity. So I hope I've been clear. There's opacity or a bit of uncertainty from the Nigerian government's perspective on the money that's being made by those Nigerians that are in the informal sector. The informal sector is going to be trade, which does not get captured in official data. That might be cash in hand trade. Let the imagination run wild. And so the question mark comes down to how much of the people that are part of the informal sector are making. Because as much as Nigeria has its issues, it could be worse if you didn't have the informal sector. So on the one hand, the Nigerian government is concerned about tax revenues, but then on the other hand, of course, there's the informal sector. And so in some way, some of the issues that need to be addressed are being taken care of through the informal sector. And just to reiterate, that 77% of the total amount of people in Nigeria's workforce. Now, the issue with inflation is it's a runaway issue. If you had wage increases that were keeping pace with the inflation, which is around 32.5 to 33%, and is projected to continue around a similar price level, it wouldn't be so bad. But the issue you have is that even enforcing the minimum wage is not a straightforward affair. In some cases, justice is available to the highest bidder. And so to just round off the statement I made about the bittersweetness of Nigeria's economic situation, for investors, you can buy bonds, 20% interest on 7-year bonds, 20% interest or coupon per year. and that's based on a B minus rating by Fitch. Now, in terms of the different types of bonds that are considered safe, it's perhaps the most riskiest, but it's still just about within the safe category. So it might be worth looking into. And your minimum entrance price to buy a bond, if we're going by sterling, is £23 or thereabouts at the current exchange rate, in multiples of £2.19. So just in case anyone is interested in exploring those investment possibilities. But at the same time, we can only hope, because it's really hope, that things improve as it pertains to income distribution. And on the last the last statement I want to finish this off on is really my concerns about Nigeria's official status as a regional power broker. They've spent, since 2012 and 2023, Nigeria has spent over $28 billion on defense. However, in terms of accountability and budgeting, there isn't really a burden of disclosure. Certainly not one that is mandated or adhered to or fully verifiable. But during the same period, banditry has flourished. The number of terrorist groups has metastasized. Whether you're looking at ISWAP or you're looking at Boko Haram or the so-called Fulani herdsmen, there's land grabbing, there's things that are going on which, frankly speaking, are easily accessible. If you search online, you've got a plethora of news agencies sharing similar information. So there does seem to be a bit of a disconnect. I am concerned about the description of Nigeria's capabilities. Now, I'll leave that in the balance, but I would say that it's important to read through the lines. And for those who are interested in my perspective as a British or Nigerian British second generation man, someone who is versed in this field, if you're interested in hearing more about Nigeria and even other African countries, both getting a bit of a flavor of the political, socio-economic climate and the possibilities both from an investment perspective and a bit of an insight as to how the everyday person might be getting by as it pertains to their finances and affordability. Thank you for listening to me. Forgive me if some of my statements were a bit choppy. We're building the aircraft whilst we fly it. And thank you again. Have a great day, noon, evening. And until next time, Godspeed.